Hello everyone, Luciano Oliveira Lawyers. Today is July the 29th and we are starting one more live stream. If you are here with us, let me know by commenting in the chat window so I know you can see me, you can hear me, and we can move along with different subjects about Brazil. And remember, if you're here live with us, you have a priority to suggest topics of your interest to be discussed here live. It doesn't need to be necessarily legal stuff. It could be legal stuff, but it could also be, like cultural, social, and other aspects of Brazil. And in the meantime, we can take a look at the ad for our sponsor, Remax Nomad Estates. Remax Nomad Estates is a real estate agency based in Rio de Janeiro, but working throughout Brazil, meaning you can, get listings, you can find properties with their help, not only in Rio de Janeiro, but in Florianópolis, São Paulo, Northeast, and so on. We have several clients working with them, and so far we are very happy with the quality of their services. You can also take note, you can take a screenshot of the contact information for Remax Nomad Estates, and they are also starting, as we speak, they're starting to offer insurance in general. So if you are in Brazil and you don't have, for instance, health insurance, now you can buy health insurance from them, and this health insurance is going to be the same health insurance that we Brazilians would buy in Brazil, which are substantially cheaper than insurance you would buy elsewhere, and that's very helpful indeed. You can also have insurance for a property, for instance, if you bought an apartment, if you bought a house, or if you're buying a vehicle as well. Okay, let's see if we have anyone with us. If there is anyone with us, please chat, comment in the chat window so I know you can see us and you can hear me. All right, do me this favor so I know we are all set. All right, so we can take a look at the news, and sharing my screen. Let me know if you can see it. And this is like, this is Estadão. That's a major Brazilian newspaper. They're talking here about Trump tariffs and other issues related to the United States. And Estadão is very interesting. Like, they try to be in the middle of the political aisle. So sometimes you see them, commenting in favor of, some of the President Trump's choices, and other times criticizing. So I think it's pretty interesting, right? Like, I don't know if in the United States there is such a type of newspaper, but what I think it is refreshing, it is that it tends to reduce the polarization, because they're always trying to, see both sides. And we also have other news. This headline here is about the Brazilian private universities. Very interesting to comment for those of you who don't know. In Brazil, typically the best universities, they are going to be actually public, right? That's the opposite of the United States. For instance, in the United States, I think, like the Ivy League schools, they are usually private, right? They're never like public schools. And in Brazil, that's exactly the opposite. So typically the best ones, they're going to be either from the federal government, from the state government, and in São Paulo is more like an exception because in Sao Paulo there is a University of Sao Paulo, and it's actually a city university, and it is typically recognized as the foremost university in Brazil, University of Sao Paulo. That's where many of the justices of the Brazilian Supreme Court come from, like where many Brazilian presidents come from the University of Sao Paulo. São Paulo is like, you know, the largest city in the country, and the state as a whole is known as the, you know, like the engine, the business engine of Brazil, right? So not surprisingly, like the main university is also located in São Paulo, and that's the headline here. That there's a headline addressing, you know, changes in programs, particularly at the private university level. All right, let's take a look back at our chat. Let's see if we have some activity. And yes, we have Wayne. YouTube is good. Modafala. Hello, Mr. Luciano. Good morning. Good morning, Modafala. Thank you for confirming, Wayne. And let us know what topics of your interest you have about Brazil so we can comment here live. And in the meantime, let's find here some topics from our backlog. All right, let me see something interesting here that we can address. All right. So this one is very specific, so I'm not gonna spend much time on it unless we have a Russian audience here with us. But this is a somewhat common question, so I'm gonna, you know, address, because our podcasts, they are typically recorded. They remain available on YouTube. So, you know, many times when people like the content, and other people are searching for a certain topic, the podcast can come up in the search results. So that's why I think it would be helpful to share about, you know, like this common question. And the common question is like if Russians or Russian citizens, if they are allowed to buy property and apply for the real estate investor visa in Brazil. And the answer is yes. Yes, Russian citizens are welcome in Brazil. Nowadays, the Brazilian federal government is actually aligned like to, you know, a left-oriented regime. So Brazil is actually, you know, kind of, how can I say, is sympathetic like to Russia, to Iran, right? To other, you know, like countries like this. But even without the alignment between the Brazilian federal government and those countries, Brazil typically try to avoid picking on nationalities. And so Brazil says, listen, you know, Russians are very welcome in Brazil. Currently, Russians can actually travel to Brazil without a visa. And they can, yes, buy properties, and they can apply for the real estate investor visa. Now, this is our answer from an immigration perspective. There is another component, which is like to send money to Brazil, even though, you know, Brazilian banks in theory would not have anything against the Russian banks. Typically, a Brazilian bank is going to rely on the SWIFT system, right? And the SWIFT system is managed by the United States, and it's also very common for Brazilian banks to work with an intermediary bank from the United States, meaning that many times when Russian citizens, they try to wire funds to Brazil, this wire transfer is not going to be possible if the money is coming from a sanctioned Russian bank. Now, even if the Russian bank is not sanctioned, many times the Brazilian bank is still going to say, no, I don't want to deal with that, because as you may imagine, like it's difficult for a Brazilian bank to keep, you know, kind of following up if the bank, you know, is clean or not. So At least the banks we work with on a daily basis, they say, listen, we have no problem with supporting a transaction for a Russian citizen as long as money is coming from another country and guess what, well documented. So we do have clients in our portfolio buying properties for investment in Brazil, but they happen to have money coming from elsewhere, not Russia, right? Because if they say, well, I just have money in Russia, we typically say, unfortunately, we cannot assist. But if they have money in another country, if this money is well documented, because that's another requirement for the Brazilian banks to be able to exchange the currency, then yes, this would be a possibility. But again, from the immigration perspective, Russian citizens, they are treated just like a U.S. citizen or any other foreign citizen for that matter. All right, let's take a look at another question from our backlog. This one is about long-term journey in Brazil. If foreign citizens end up getting tired of the country and returning to their countries of origin. That's an interesting question. So let me rephrase the question, and I'm adapting the question. The question goes like this: listen, I'm considering relocating to Brazil. I know Brazil for a while, but I'm wondering, like, if over long term, if I'm not gonna get homesick, if I'm not gonna give up on the living in Brazil dream. And then what I can share with you is that, of course, this is very specific to each one, right? Like, I mean, different people, they have different goals and different desires. And in my experience, there are people who are going to live, happily forever in Brazil. But there are also people who are going to, get tired of Brazil, maybe 10 years down the line, and maybe 20 years down the line. We have like a prospective client. She bought a property in Ceará, like a beachfront property. And now she wants to go back to the US, and she's trying to sell the property. And I think her timeline is between 10 to 20 years in Brazil. I guess, she had a blast, but maybe the novelty is not there anymore. And now she wants to go back to the United States. And we do see that happening. Very interesting to, analyze, like when the foreign citizen is coming to Brazil through the digital nomad, digital nomad visa or residency. Digital nomad is typically good for a single year, and then as of today, it's renewable for multiple terms. And no, I don't know if you're going to be able to renew forever. Nobody can tell you that. But as of today, we have clients renewing for a third term, meaning that they are on their fourth year under the digital nomad, right? We also have many people who would start with the digital nomad, to test the waters, and then they are going to move to the real estate investment residency, which actually gives you a shot at permanent residency and potentially citizenship down the line. The digital nomad will never get you there. Brazil is very different from other countries. Like, for instance, in Portugal, pretty much, right? Like, I mean, I'm kind of simplifying here the take, but in Portugal, whatever legal track you secure in terms of residency, this legal residency is gonna lead you to potentially, right, to permanent residency. So even if you have the student residency, even if you have the digital nomad residency in Portugal, they are all good for first the permanent residency, and then way down the line potentially the citizenship, but not Brazil. For Brazil, student track, digital nomad track, a bunch of tracks, they are not gonna get you anywhere. Okay, so very important for you to factor that into your planning. Okay, all right, let's see what else we have over here. Okay, let's take a look at opening a bank account in Brazil. That's another common question we have here at the firm. And the question goes like this: well, I went to the bank said they are not going to open a bank account until I am a legal resident in Brazil. So whenever you hear that, we're talking about the typical traditional bank account, and that's true. Like if you walk into a bank in Brazil and you try to open a regular bank account with your passport, guess what? You're not going to be able to do so. However, there is a less common type of bank account, which is the non-resident bank account, is also known in Brazil as CDE, conta de domiciliado no exterior, or a bank account for someone who resides abroad, right? Like the CDE stands for someone residing abroad. We like to call it a non-resident bank account. We think it makes more sense, but it is the same thing. And the concept here is that this bank account is kind of a simplified, a more basic type of bank account. And whenever you have this bank account, particularly the Brazilian Revenue Service, they know this is being used by a non-tax resident. Okay, and this is a type of arrangement I don't see often elsewhere, right? Like, I mean, there is nothing like this, for instance, in the United States. But this is a thing that is very specific to the Brazilian banking system. So, and many people say, well, I went to the bank and they said they don't know what I'm talking about. And they say, yes, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense, because banks, you know, they are going to be handling 1,000 Brazilians for probably every one foreign citizen, right? So, you know, the chances of you talking to a person over the counter who has handled such request is very, very, very low. So to me, it's not surprising that they don't know what you're talking about. Now, ideally, you would ask to talk to the manager, and you know, maybe bring with you, like, printed some paperwork about the non-resident bank account, because if they try to say, well, we don't have anything like this, then you say, yes, you actually have this, and then, you know, hopefully get somewhere through this approach. Here at the firm, we do assist, like, you know, most of our clients, we do assist with opening a non-resident checking account, particularly when they are buying property in Brazil. All right, let's see what else we have. We have Matt again. It's good to see you, Matt. Happy to have Matt and Adrian here with us. Matt says, oi, Dr. Oliveira. We met with Roberto with one moving yesterday. We haven't received the quote yet, but so far we are very impressed with his knowledge and service. Glad to hear, Matt. Thank you so much for sharing. It's good to know. And yes, that was our hope, Matt, that they would, you know, be supportive of your needs, and please keep us posted about the, you know, the ongoing arrangements for your moving. Very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing, Matt and Adrian, and good to know you guys are on track. All right, let's see what else we have here in our backlog. All right, so this is more about like this is a question about digital nomad, and the person is asking like if they do need a lawyer to apply for the digital nomad or not, and like from a legal perspective, you do not need like a lawyer to apply, uh, but many of our clients they think that a service like ours is not just helpful, but is actually a must for their journeys, right? Like they are typically busy professionals. They have their own businesses, or they are working like for a meaningful employer, for instance, in the United States. And like to spend I don't know, like 10 hours to learn about the dynamics of the digital nomad, about how to apply, and also to many times not finding the right information out there, which could jeopardize their applications. Like, I mean, they just think it doesn't make sense to go without a law firm, right? So that's why I believe our firm is probably one of the top providers of digital nomad visa and residency advisory in Brazil. And yes, we have many clients and so on. Very interesting to note that in Brazil, differently from the United States, there it is possible for non-attorneys to advise on stuff. Now, as you may imagine, the advisory you get is typically not consistent as what you would get from a law firm, right? You're getting advisory and service from people who are basically not qualified, are not, certified, are not licensed, and therefore what you're getting, it could be, all over the place. We also see some like smaller firms, more like a mom and pop shop. There is nothing wrong with a mom and pop shop, but the problem is that many times, like if they have an issue with these two people running this business, not surprisingly, like they end up getting their clients in trouble. And it's not unusual here at the firm for people to come to us after being elsewhere and not being successful at applying or getting the advisory or having things done timely. Now, one thing I need to be very honest about is like in immigration in general, there is always room for exceptions. Whenever we have like a road map, like for a particular track, like either the digital nomad, the real estate investor visa, retirement, marriage, and so on, all of those expected steps, they are expected, they are never guaranteed. And many times what we see, particularly with foreign citizens from the United States, and listen, U.S. citizens, they are the majority of our clients, so we deeply respect and appreciate. But something that we see, and many times we need to help them change this understanding, is that they think everything is for granted, right? Like meaning that if they're applying for the digital nomad, they don't think they're actually going through a process that could deny their application. They think it's almost like, all right, that's just paperwork, right? Like, I mean, they don't understand that timelines could change, that the Brazilian Federal Police could ask for additional documents. And whenever they see such deviation, it looks like to me that, like they don't fully appreciate the fact that they are asking permission to come to Brazil, right? Like, I mean, it's like they are entitled, and Brazil should be happy to be receiving such U.S. citizens, right? And this posture, whenever they present such posture, at a Brazilian federal police interview, this is not gonna go well. Okay, I guarantee. Like, I mean, the immigration officers, whenever they see someone who feels, like entitled to things, they are gonna create a problem for the person. I've seen that happening, many times. And even when I'm discussing with this person, like, I see the way they come across. I say, this guy, like, once they show up at the Brazilian Federal Police, this is not gonna go well. And we try to coach them and say, listen, try to be nice. Understand that many times they are gonna be overwhelmed. Like in São Paulo, right? There is a Brazilian Federal Police station in Lapa. That's a neighborhood in São Paulo. And they handle, I don't know, like, I mean, thousands of people potentially a day, right? Like, I mean, it's a massive operation, and many times they are, they are not in their, best mood, and you are there to make your case easy for them to approve, not the opposite, right? You're not there like to give them a reason to not approve your case. Okay, so that's just a nuance, particularly for foreign citizens from developing countries. When they come to Brazil, they have this understanding, incorrect understanding, that the immigration procedure is just pro forma, right? It's not like you're ever gonna be denied, and that's when the problem happens. So yes, we assist, like, from the documentation, the planning, the education perspective, but there will always be room for unexpected outcomes. All right, so I think that's the bottom line of what I'm saying here to you. Okay, let's see what else we have, and we do have some guests online. And remember, if you hear it us, don't be shy. You are free to suggest a topic of your interest to be discussed. Remember, if you like our content, you help our business, and you also help other people just like you to find our content. So yes, please like our video, subscribe, and this way, whenever we have new content, you're gonna receive a notification. Okay, we have here a comment from Matt and Adrian. In your past experiences, approximately how long does it take a consulate to approve or deny a retirement visa once they have all the required documents from the applicant? So Matt, that's an interesting question, and it's gonna depend on the Brazilian consulate or Brazilian embassy. And it's also going to depend on the country. Okay, now let's assume we're talking about the United States. In the United States, the average timeline we see is going to be typically between 15 to 30 days for a review. Okay, so meaning that once the Brazilian consulate, let's say if we're talking about the Brazilian, it could be the Brazilian consulate in Houston, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, in Atlanta, in San Francisco. Once they have your complete application, you would typically get an answer between 15 to 30 days. Okay, sometimes, I don't know if they have someone idle over there who's not doing much, and you can get an answer in just a week, but that's not like the standard. The standard is more like 15 to 30 days. Now, it's very rare for the timeline to exceed 30 days, indicating that there is a kind of, hard deadline for the consulates in terms of self-assessment of their performance, that they shouldn't cross the 30-day timeline. And it's very refreshing because Portugal, for instance, has a guideline of 2 months to review an application, and sometimes they take even longer. So Brazil applying, at least in the US, right? Because again, it depends on the country. applying a timeline between 15, a typical timeline between 15 and 30 days. I think it is refreshing and helpful for the US applicants. Hermon, good day, my friend. It's been a minute. Yes, Hermon, good to see you. How's everything? Hope all has been well with you. Yes, Hermon, and tell us, like, what about you? Where have you been? I hope you've been enjoying your summer vacations. Is that so, Hermon? And, just because you're talking about summer vacations, as most of you probably know, like in Brazil, we have the opposite, naturally, right? The opposite calendar. So for us, the summer vacations, guess what? They are around December, not around July. July in Brazil, for most of the country, is actually like a cold month. Like, so people are gonna be dressing up, and typically, like the school break in Brazil is just like during the month of July, and actually the longer break is gonna be like from typically the end of November or beginning of December to February or March. So again, right, it's the opposite in the U.S. Summer vacation is around July. Many schools, they start their breaks at the end of May, beginning of June, and return to the classroom is going to be at the end of July, or by, I think the latest by mid-August in the United States. So I know that for many of our clients who are, for instance, in the US, in Europe, they are actually enjoying their summer vacations, but not in Brazil. In Brazil, summer vacations are around December, January, and in July we have a 1 month break. And the weather is kind of similar to what you would have in the US during the months of December, of January, and of course we don't get as much cold as you would see in the United States. Snow, for instance, is going to be common only in the extreme south of Brazil, and for most of the north and the northeast of Brazil, there is no meaningful winter whatsoever. Okay, so like for the northeast, or for instance Ceará, right? Ceará is a state in the northeast in which I spend a good part of my time. And for this state, like, there is no winter whatsoever. Lowest temperatures would be, I don't know, in the 60s, like, I don't know, 67, 68. 67 or 68 is already cold by Ceará's standards, right? Like, and it's very amusing to me because, like, I mean, I'm used to much colder temperatures. When we are in São Paulo, temperatures could go as low as in their 30s. But when I am in Ceará and temperature is like in the 60s, it's not uncommon for locals to say that it is cold, right? And they actually mean it, right? Like when they say it's cold, and they feel the cold, and it is like in the 60s. So very interesting. Aaron, good to see you here, Aaron. July, Brazil winter, Canada, inferno. Right? I hear, Aaron. Yes, exactly. Yeah, and I heard that there are heat waves in the United States as well, and very unfortunate, right? Like now it's a more somber tone, like in Europe. There are thousands of people dying, like, from heat. And there is like an ongoing discussion if they should still stick to the no air conditioning type of lifestyle, right? And there are many, of course, like many Europeans, they choose to have AC, but culturally is not like in the United States. In the United States, I don't think you would ever find a household, no matter the neighborhood, no matter the city, no matter the the social class of this family, you would never find a home without AC. And as you probably know, in Europe, is very common even for middle class families to have a residence without AC. And so what you see with the crazy temperatures throughout the globe is that this is actually causing very serious health issues in Europe, unfortunately. All right, let's see what else we have over here. All right, and this is a question about marriage in Brazil. It is a somewhat common question about the need for a prenuptial if a dual nationality couple like a Brazilian and a U.S. citizen, if they would need a prenuptial in Brazil. So this is gonna typically depend. On the first domicile for the couple. From the Brazilian law perspective, the first domicile for the couple is gonna dictate the body of law that is gonna address their marriage system. Okay, so let's say if the couple, like someone from the United States and someone from Brazil, if they are marrying, in Brazil and they are gonna live in Brazil for the beginning of their married life, that's where you should have the prenuptial agreement, again, from the Brazilian legal perspective. Now, what we see is that many people, they are going to try to go overboard and they are going to try to have prenuptial agreements in two countries because in their mindset, in their heads, like they're saying, well, I'm covering both bases, right? Difficult for me to judge, like from the other country's perspective. But from the Brazilian perspective, like if you marry in Brazil, prenuptial is going to be done in Brazil. And unfortunately, the prenuptial in Brazil doesn't hold as much water as it would in the United States. Okay, so if you marry in the United States and you have the first domicile in the United States, typically the prenuptial agreement would be done in the U.S. and if done correctly, following all the rules of the state in which you are marrying in the U.S. and living afterwards, this would represent a very meaningful degree of safety for your assets in that particular marriage. Again, in Brazil, unfortunately, a prenuptial agreement doesn't hold as much water. And I can give you, just a few examples. Let's say if in the prenuptial agreement you preset what should be, for instance, spousal support in case of a divorce, a Brazilian judge would have no problem in basically ignoring that provision and say, you know what, I understand that there was this provision, but given the facts that I see here in the divorce stage, I'm just going to be basically ignoring that preset spousal support, and I'm going to, award something else. Of course, there should be enough facts to support such posture by the Brazilian judge. But what I see in the U.S. is that the U.S. judge would actually try to follow the prenuptial agreement, by the dot, most of the time. There are exceptions as well in the United States, but in Brazil, it's just a fact of life that judges, they are not gonna feel so constrained by the prenuptial agreement. Another, type of is more like an extreme type of situation. But let's say you have a prenuptial agreement saying, you know what, both spouses, they work, they have their own sources of income, and they agree that no spousal support should be ever granted. Right? This is going to be written and codified in the Brazilian prenuptial agreement. And let's say if by chance one of the spouses get really hurt in a car crash and become like disabled, even though there is this type of prenuptial agreement, chances are during a divorce the judge would make the non-disabled spouse to support the disabled spouse potentially indefinitely, right? Like that's a kind of a textbook example we have in Brazil. So to go from no support to basically support for the remaining of the former spouse's life, you can see how much latitude a Brazilian judge would have whenever adjudicating a divorce in Brazil, despite the existence of the prenuptial agreement. All right, we have a General Principal. Boa tarde, Senhor Oliveira. Good to see you, General Principal. Is there a minimum level of Portuguese expected for a successful immigration appointment with Polícia Federal? Would they get upset if you ask to use Google Translate? General Principal, so there are two standards here, okay? There is a standard for most of the immigration applications, and then there is a separate standard if you are applying for the Brazilian citizenship. So the standard for the Brazilian citizenship, you should be fluent enough to have meaningful conversations with the agent. So let's say down the line in your journey, let's assume you are starting your journey now. Down the line, when you try to apply for Brazilian citizenship, you should be able to have a complex conversation with the agent. Now, if you are at the beginning of your journey, let's say if you are applying, for instance, for a digital nomad, if you are applying for a retirement, if you are applying for a student residency, all of those things, it is generally fine for you to not be able to speak Portuguese. Okay, now there is no requirement for you to speak Portuguese, but kind of like what you're saying, sometimes you're gonna have an issue with the communication, particularly if the officer behind the counter, if they don't speak English, because some of them they do speak English, and they are gonna see you as an opportunity for them to practice their English. So communication is gonna be much better. Typically, you can get more rapport with this person, and chances are your case is gonna have better chances than you would have if the officer doesn't speak any English, you don't speak any Portuguese, because then that's just like you expect. This interaction is gonna be less than ideal, and many times miscommunication is gonna impact on how your application is handled. For many clients, when they're working with us, they are gonna hire our service to go with them to the appointment, and typically we are able to facilitate the interaction. Sometimes the officer is going to ask for a certain thing, and then we can quickly address what they are asking to our client. We know their files. We can many times, not always, but many times we could even produce some type of paperwork on the spot. So we could, for instance, tell the immigration officer, listen, we don't have this document right here, but we do have it in his files. So would you accept like a version that we are showing to you digitally, or would allow us to go to the OAB room and print this document out and bring it back to you? The OAB is like the Brazilian Bar Association, and typically there's going to be a room with a printer and computer reserved for attorneys. And when that's the case, we can basically, just go there, print out a paper, and present on the spot. Something else, general principle that's very common for the registration, right? Like that step when you show up to, do your fingerprinting and other stuff for you to get the RNM card. Something that is very common is that many times you exceeded your allowed time, and if that's the case, they may ask you to pay for like a fine on the spot, and typically this is not going to be paid to the same immigration officer. This is going to be paid in a different section, many times in the same building, and you're going to need to go to this different section, different department, pay the fine, get the receipt that you paid the fine, and if time allows, to go back to the same immigration officer that was handling your case, to them, get an approval. Sometimes this works. Let's say if it is a nice agent, right, a nice immigration officer, many times they say, yeah, go there, pay, and come back and talk to me. Other times, they're gonna say, you know what, like you're gonna pay the fine and then you're gonna need to reschedule. You're gonna need to reschedule and come back here. And then guess what? Many of our clients, they have trips scheduled and this and that. But whenever that happens, it's important for the person to understand that that's the nature of immigration. There is so much we can control, and when that happens, it's just natural for them to have to come back on another appointment. And there is no amount of lawyering that we can do to overcome an immigration request, a reasonable immigration request. Like the immigration officer at that moment in time, they have a discretion on how to handle the case. The one moment in which we can actually push back is when they make a decision that exceeds the discretion that they can have. So many times, like if they do something that is clearly against the rules, then we have all the possibility to push back, and in some rare cases, we even gonna sue the Brazilian government. Okay, like we don't sue the Brazilian federal police officer, we sue the Brazilian government, because that immigration officer, he's representing the state. So whenever we file a lawsuit against Brazil as the country, and naturally, right, we're gonna drive this lawsuit to the sector like representing the Brazilian immigration, and then we're gonna present like the legal reasoning. We're gonna present the decision that we are trying to fight, and then we're gonna present like what we are asking to the judge. And Brazilian judges, they are gonna many times side with the immigrant whenever the reasoning is solid and whenever the ask is reasonable. One type of situation that a legal procedure is typically helpful or required is like, let's say if there is a Brazilian and a US citizen, they are married in the United States, they want to come and live in Brazil, but the US citizen has a meaningful criminal record. Sometimes, like a sex-related crime, which typically for Brazil is a no-go from the beginning. But let's say if it is a minor, it's difficult to say a minor sex crime, but let's say a sex crime that happened like 20 or 30 years ago. Sometimes it was like, there was one case recently here, this gentleman, he had like a record, his name was in a sex offender registry, and the whole situation arose because of a relationship that he had when he was 18 years old with a teenager who was 16. Okay, so he was 18 years old, the girl was 16 years old, and guess what, right? That's statutory rape. And so this guy was with a horrible paperwork, but this was from a long time ago. And so this paperwork would be enough for the Brazilian immigration to deny any type of residency to him. But given the time passed and the specifics of the crime, the Brazilian government will probably consider that this person should not be barred from living in Brazil with their Brazilian partner. And this is not going to ever happen at the Brazilian Federal Police level. This is going to happen at the judicial level. Okay, so just highlighting that for us to sue the Brazilian government is not because you didn't like, and I'm not talking about you, General Pinson. Just now I'm extrapolating to like situations in general. Many times, clients, they are going to come to us aggravated by the immigration officer's behavior, right? And they say, well, I want to sue, I want to do, and we say, listen, that's not how it works, okay? For us to sue the Brazilian government, it gotta be something meaningful, and it gotta be to give you something that you cannot get in a different way. So for most of our clients, like, it's just a matter of scheduling another appointment, getting some additional documents that they're asking. I'm going to give you an example. We had this week, I don't recall exactly if it is a marriage. I think it is a marriage, a residency application, right? A residency application based on marriage with a Brazilian. And for 99% of the cases, we just need, for the U.S. citizen, an FBI background check. And guess what? This immigration officer, it was for the first time in that particular location, and the location was the city of Niterói. For the first time ever, they said, you know what? In addition to the FBI background check, I want a state background check in the U.S., which doesn't make much sense because the FBI is gonna gather everything that the person has, no matter the state, right? But listen, that was the request, and it doesn't make sense for us to go and sue the Brazilian Federal Police because they are asking for something else. We say, listen, it doesn't make sense, right? But our recommendation is that you get this document, and we schedule another appointment, and listen, you're gonna get what you need. That was the only thing that the agent said it was missing. So that's another example of processes that don't always work according to the book. Okay. Okay, Ponco, bom dia from California. Bom dia, okay. Can I live in Brazil for 3 to 6 months each year on my tourist visa until I secure a retirement visa? Okay, Ponco, yes, potentially yes, for U.S. citizens as of today. Like, you're from California, so I assume you are a U.S. citizen. For U.S. citizens now, yes, you need a visa to enter Brazil. There is the so-called e-visa, which is very easy for you to apply. In 90% of the time, you don't need to go to the Brazilian consulate. You can apply online. Once you have the e-visa, you can, which is typically good for 10 years, you can enter Brazil, and you typically get 90 days. I'm saying typically because, again, there is discretion on the immigration officer. And we do see many times when they are going to give you 30 days or 60 days, okay? And so typically you're going to get 90 days. And then once you are in the country, based on your nationality, you have the opportunity of requesting an extension. There is a procedure to ask for the extension. It's a kind of pain in the neck. You need to set up an appointment, gather a bunch of documents, go to this appointment, and just like everything else, there's going to be discretion on the police officer that is going to be, handling your extension application to grant it or not. Okay, so that's the nuance that many people, they don't get it. Like you say, well, but I want to know, am I gonna get it? Is it available? Is it guaranteed? No, nothing is guaranteed. Now, this said, the vast majority of applicants from the United States, yes, they are gonna get the extension. So is an extension available? An extension is available for you to apply, and there is a good chance you would get it. If you get it, typically they get you an additional 90 days, and if you get the 90 days, then yes, you would have up to 6 months to stay in Brazil. So, from a planning perspective, I think you're gonna say, well, I will probably be able to stay for up to 6 months, but if I don't get the extension, if something happens, I'm gonna be happy with 3 months. That would be my take on that strategy. Now, many people, when they find out about the uncertainty, they are gonna say, you know what, I don't like the uncertainty. I wanna be able to plan because I don't know, I'm gonna rent a place for 6 months. So I need more certainty. And if that's your case, our recommendation would be typically for you to pursue, of course, as long as you qualify, but our recommendation would be for you to pursue the digital nomad residency, because the digital nomad gives you up to a year, and they don't care if you're just going to use 5 or 6 months out of the year, and you could even keep renewing. So yes, we have people who actually don't exceed the 183-day mark, seeking to avoid tax residency in Brazil, and they're still going to pursue the digital nomad because they don't want anyone telling them, when they need to leave or enter. Because once you get to the digital nomad, like typically you can enter and leave Brazil as you wish. We have, some, clients who are going to travel between the United States and Brazil once a month, and they do that under the digital nomad, and they don't have any issues. So that's another strategy, okay, Ponko, for you to consider. All right. Again, if you're here with us, if you're enjoying the streaming, do me a favor, go and click on like. If you like our content, this is good for our firm. This is also good for other people like you who can find our content later on. And also subscribe for more content that we are producing as we speak. We just launched like a video about the Jardins neighborhood in São Paulo. And every time we launch a new video, if you are subscribed, you're gonna be notified about the new content. Okay, and it looks like we are arriving at the end of our live stream. I want to share with you guys that I'm going to take a week break, and this week break is going to be next week. So we're not going to have any live stream on next Wednesday, right? Next Wednesday is going to be August the 5th, and we're not going to be here on Wednesday, August the 5th, but I hope to be here with you. And we actually have an appointment already on YouTube, and you can come to the live section of our content, and you can click to notify me. That way you're not gonna miss our live stream on August the 12th. And I really hope to see you back here on August the 12th. For any of you who are, traveling, whether for vacation in Brazil, typical of the month of July, or if you are enjoying summer in the North Hemisphere, I wish you, pleasant travels, and hoping to see you again on August the 12th, and wishing you all a blessed rest of your day.